First off, let's set the stage. Many people grew up hearing about both autism and Asperger's. For years, they were thought to be two distinct conditions. But in recent times, there's been a big shift in how we talk about and diagnose these disorders. Autism is often associated with challenges in communication, social interactions, and behavior, while Asperger's was once thought to be a milder form of autism where individuals have normal to above average intelligence but still struggle with social cues. But here's where things get interesting. In 2013, the DSM-5 officially removed Asperger's as its own diagnosis. Instead, it grouped it under the broader term Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. So, why did this change happen, and what does it mean for people who once identified with Asperger's? Let's break it down. You might be wondering, why did the DSM-5 stop using the term Asperger's altogether? Here's the deal. As researchers learned more about autism, they realized that Asperger's wasn't actually a separate condition. Instead, it fell under the broader autism spectrum. In the past, doctors would diagnose children with Asperger's if they had milder symptoms of autism, such as trouble reading social cues or understanding sarcasm, but didn't have significant language delays. This made Asperger's seem like a less severe form of autism, but in reality, the line between Asperger's and other types of autism was pretty blurry. Have you ever thought about how people with Asperger's and autism might have more in common than we once realized? That's exactly what led the DSM to combine Asperger's and autism under the same diagnosis. By using the term Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, it allows for a better understanding that autism presents itself in different ways and in varying degrees of severity. And this isn't just about terminology. It's also about making sure people get the right support and treatment. Previously, someone diagnosed with Asperger's might have received less intensive treatment than someone diagnosed with autism, even though they could face very similar challenges. Does that surprise you? It really highlights how important it is to rethink the way we talk about and approach developmental differences. But we're just getting started. Keep watching to find out more about how exactly autism and what used to be called Asperger's are similar and different today. Now that we know why Asperger's is no longer used, let's dig into the similarities and differences between what we used to call Asperger's and autism. First up, communication. People with ASD, including those who were once diagnosed with Asperger's, often struggle with communication. They may have trouble understanding nonverbal cues like facial expressions or body language, and they might find it difficult to keep up with conversations. But one key difference is that individuals with what used to be called Asperger's generally don't have language delays. They usually start speaking at the same age as their peers, but may speak in a formal or overly academic way. Next, let's talk about social interactions. Both individuals with autism and those formerly diagnosed with Asperger's may find social situations confusing or overwhelming. They might not understand unwritten social rules, like how close to stand to someone or how to join in a group conversation. But here's where things get nuanced. People with Asperger's tend to have a strong desire to connect with others, but may struggle with how to do it. On the other hand, some individuals with more severe forms of autism may not seek out social interaction in the same way. Another big area to look at is behavior and interests. A person with Asperger's might have intense, focused interests in a specific topic, whether it's trains, history, or video games. And they can often talk about that topic for hours. This is something we also see in people with autism, though their interests may vary. And they might also show repetitive behaviors like hand flapping or rocking. However, the core challenge is the same, navigating a world that feels different from the one neurotypical people experience. And remember, every person is unique. Just because two people are on the spectrum doesn't mean they'll have the same struggles or strengths. In 2024, the autism spectrum is better understood than ever before. Thanks to advances in neuroscience and psychology, we now know that autism isn't just a disorder. It's a different way of processing the world. And this shift in thinking is one of the reasons why we no longer separate out Asperger's as its own condition. One recent study found that individuals who were diagnosed with Asperger's often share the same underlying neurological differences as those with other forms of autism. For example, brain imaging studies show that both groups process social information differently than neurotypical individuals. This reinforces the idea that Asperger's and autism are two sides of the same coin. Have you ever wondered if these changes in the DSM might actually lead to better outcomes for people on the spectrum? Researchers are finding that by grouping all these conditions under one umbrella, it becomes easier to identify patterns, provide tailored therapies, and offer the right level of support. It's about recognizing that autism is a spectrum, and no one person's experience will look the same as another's. If you're finding this breakdown interesting, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you can keep learning about important topics like this. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, I get that Asperger's is no longer a diagnosis, but is that really a good thing? That's a great question, and it's something many people have debated since the change was first made. On one hand, the decision to remove Asperger's from the DSM and replace it with a broader ASD diagnosis makes sense. It's based on the latest science, and it reflects a better understanding of how autism affects people differently. It's also meant to reduce confusion and make sure people get the right services. But on the other hand, some people who were diagnosed with Asperger's feel a sense of loss. They identified with the label, and now they're being told that it no longer exists. For some, it feels like their personal experiences are being erased. What do you think? Should we stick to the science, or should we be more sensitive to how people feel about their diagnoses? It's a tough balance, but one thing is for sure. Understanding these conditions better is always a good thing. And we're moving toward a world where everyone can get the help they need, no matter where they fall on the spectrum. If you're still with us, you're going to want to keep watching. Because next, we're diving into what this means for families and individuals living with ASD today. For families, the change from Asperger's to ASD can be confusing. You might have a child who was previously diagnosed with Asperger's, and now that label no longer applies. What does that mean for their care? The good news is that services and treatments have actually expanded. By moving toward the Autism Spectrum model, clinicians are able to offer more personalized care based on individual needs. In fact, more schools, healthcare providers, and therapists are trained to recognize the wide variety of ways autism can present. That means that whether your child has mild or more significant challenges, they're more likely to get the support they need. Have you or someone you know been affected by this change in diagnosis? It's not just about the diagnosis itself. It's about making sure people on the spectrum have access to the resources and understanding that help them thrive. And as we continue to learn more about the brain and how it works, these systems will only improve. So, to wrap things up, while the term Asperger's is no longer used in 2024, the people who were diagnosed with it aren't forgotten. In fact, by recognizing that they're part of the broader autism spectrum, we're able to provide more comprehensive and accurate support. This shift reflects our growing understanding of how complex and varied the autism spectrum is. Whether you're someone living with ASD, a family member, or just curious about the topic, understanding these changes is key to building a more inclusive world. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Autism Proud, for more insightful content on important health and developmental topics. Let us know in the comments what you think about the changes in the DSM. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new today.